All right. Hey, welcome everybody, and thank you to our organizers, the Vilas and Oneida County Democratic Parties. My name is Pat Kreitlow. I'm from UpNorthNews, as you can probably tell by the really too big banner they sent me. I asked for something a little more small and humble, but I will take this. For those of you not familiar with UpNorthNews, we're a state-based newsroom with a lot of Wisconsin features, plus reporting on how our leaders in Madison and Washington are working for or against Wisconsin values that we spell out in the About page of our website, upnorthnewswi.com. I also have a brief daily live stream on Facebook and YouTube with guests and headlines and always correct opinions. Every weekday morning at 9 a.m. you can find me on Facebook by searching for Pat Kreitlow Up North. Again, that's Pat Kreitlow Up North. Before we really get into the heart of things, a little housekeeping. I'm sure you saw that there were restrooms when you came in, off to the side here. There are also exits here and here in the corners if they are necessary. Before I really get going, I want to thank some of our local businesses and encourage you to patronize them while you're here in beautiful Lake Tomahawk. They include the Lake House Coffee Shop, the Lake Tomahawk Meat Market, Bake Me Happy and Company, Drive-In for ice cream. For dining, there's the Shamrock, the Village Cafe and Pub, the Gaslight Tavern has an Asian fusion menu, and the Lake Tom Tap House and Patio Bar. And you can always bike the Link of the Lakes Trail from Lake Tomahawk to Clear Lake on paved trails. The majority of the Link the Lakes Trail has been surfaced with a bond mix for easy riding. Got a couple of special hellos here. Merlin Van Buren, are you still around here someplace? There he is running for state assembly. Oh, he's talking to good campaigning ever in state assembly. Give a wave. There you go. I also want to give special recognition to Dan Hagan from WJFW Newswatch 12, who's here, part work, part personal, but I'm going to actually promote the fact that he did a hell of a job last Tuesday with the 7th Congressional District Republican debate. And he's going to do the same thing next Tuesday with the 3 Democratic candidates running in the 7th Congressional District. So either tune in live or head to the WJFW website. It was very easy to watch it there. And I also want to single out Kay and Melvin Hoff for their hospitality. Melvin, I have a very high bar for old fashions. You reached it and then some. Thank you. There's nothing better than an old fashioned along the lake at sunset. And thank you again for your hospitality. All right, well, let's see how things are going to work here. We're going to have some opening introductions. Then I'm going to ask a few questions. We'll give, roughly 2-minute responses. We're going to give rebuttals at my discretion. We've got a crack team here with the timekeeping. But if anybody knows me, it's like, you're going to get to finish your thought. I don't know who. Watch me get into trouble here. I don't know who at the state Democratic Convention thought it was a good idea to cut microphones off in mid-sentence. That is not happening here. That was ridiculous. So you're going to finish your thought before I go, okay. Wrap it up, people. Then after a few questions from me, I'm going to turn to cards that are going to be handed to me by other members of our crack team in the back. If you didn't see it, there's a table back there where you can write your question on an index card, and then they're going to bring those up to me. I will shuffle through them and ask a few questions there. Finally, at the end, for what you might think of as a closing statement, I don't want to do that. You're going to get an opening statement. We don't need a rehash. We don't need to do rebuttals of things that were earlier. I'd rather turn it into an opportunity. So for our candidates, we can't possibly get to every topic. So just keep in the back of your head a topic we don't get to, and I'm going to ask you at the end, what else you want to talk about? And preferably a topic that we didn't already hit. So make a note as we go along, all right? Good. By now you've noticed that the field of candidates in the Democratic gubernatorial primary has shrunk this week with the departure of Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley, and a lot of wonderful things were rightly said about him and his campaign, and certainly about Missy Hughes as well. The panel of remaining candidates has shrunk as well, with Mandela Barnes sending his regrets earlier, and the team for Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez reaching out late last night to say that something personal had come up, and that will prevent her from attending both of today's events in Lake Tomahawk this morning and this afternoon in Ashland. Now, I know firsthand how very, very it's for their benefit, very grueling these campaign schedules can be. And so while we're disappointed in the folks who aren't here, it just makes us that much more appreciative to the candidates who have joined us here. So let us applaud their dedication and willingness to join us up north. All right, I'm almost done yapping. I got something I want to do personally. Little audience survey. Be honest, we're all friends here, whatever stripes we're at. How many of you, I'm going to ask you have you settled on one candidate you're sure, 95% sure one candidate. Have you narrowed it down to two candidates? Have you not even narrowed it down to two yet? And I'm also going to ask if you're a Tom Tiffany supporter instead. No booing, no nothing. We're neighbors and friends here, all right? How many of you, 95% certain, you know who you're voting for? Okay, that's fair. Guess what? There's still time to change your minds. That's why they're all here. How many of you have got it down to two, you think? All right, that's fair. And how many of you, I got nothing yet. Ask me on August 10th for the August 11th. There we go. Lots of open minds. It is also, oh, I'm sorry, Tom Tiffany voters, if you're there, okay, I understand. I'm sure you are. We're all friends. All right. This has been a hard year because we've been blessed with such high quality candidates. And this is very frustrating for them because it's tough to fundraise, for example, when you're talking to people going, I just don't know yet. There's so many good ones out here. So I'm so glad they've got the chance to come up here today and say, look, you maybe have an open mind, but give a listen to what would make me be the best choice to be the next governor of Wisconsin come November. All right, time for some opening statements, roughly a minute, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you can do a lot in a 1-minute campaign ad. And so that's essentially what they're going to do is a 1 minute, here's who I am, who's why I'm running, and all of that. I've got a random list here, but let's make it more random. Gerald, give me a number from 1 to 3. 2, okay. Now give me a number 1 or 3. 3, all right. So on my little random list here, number 1 is State Representative Francesca Hong, who's going to have a minute to tell us all about herself. State Representative Hong, good morning. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thank you all so much for being here today and taking time to engage in the democratic process. Right now, we are in a pivotal moment in Wisconsin history, and it is a movement moment. I'm joining you from my hometown of Madison, Wisconsin, where I'm a proud daughter of immigrants, of public schools. I am currently a renter and a single mom and a community organizer, and someone who has served in the state legislature for the last 5 years with a focus on public education, paid leave for all, child care, and a devotion to ensuring that we have a clean and healthy planet. Ours is a campaign that has been traveling across the state and doing over 300 events in meeting voters in every corner of the state. We are proud to be the most multi-generational, bipartisan coalition, and our commitment to ensuring that we are pushing for the most fundamentally universal policies when it comes to housing, free childcare, and making sure that every Wisconsinite has what we need as we are facing the growing struggles for working class people and a Trump regime that continues to wreak chaos for our state.
All right, Fran, thank you very much. Let's see, next will be former Department of Administration Secretary Joel Brennan. Joel, good morning. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, Pat.
Let's see. You should be. You got a blue, so it should be. Grab Fran's there and see how that works out for you.
See how well we cooperate up here? Good morning, everybody. Joel Brennan, 5th generation Wisconsinite, 10th of 11 Brennan kids. For 25 years, I have been a problem solver in government, in the nonprofit sector, in business. In 2018, Tony Evers asked me to leave the job that I was at and take on the role of the Secretary of Administration, which is kind of the captain of the governor's cabinet. It's the top appointed position for the governor in his cabinet. And we got to work. This was after 8 years of Scott Walker and a right-wing legislature, and there was lots for us to fix. We invested in broadband. We fixed some damn roads. roads, if you remember that. We got Wisconsin moving. We created the largest budget surplus in state history, the largest rainy day fund, and then COVID hit, and we were asked and we were required to do things that government hadn't thought about doing in 100 years. And we've provided resources for family farmers, for small businesses, for renters who couldn't keep a roof over their heads. And I'll tell you what we learned then, what's important now. It's easy to break things in government, much harder to make it work for people. I want this job, I can do this job because I have demonstrated both in government and outside that I am somebody who solves problems and makes things work. I look forward to having the chance to answer your questions. It's nice to be back here. Some of you I saw in my last visit about 10 days ago, so I'm really thrilled to be here. So thanks everybody for showing up today.
All right, Joe, thank you. State Senator Kelda Roys, good morning.
Good morning. Oh, same problem here.
Uh-oh.
There we go. Good morning, friends. Thank you so much for having me. I'm State Senator Kelda Roys and delighted to be back up in the Vilas County area. I have been spending my adult life for the past 25 years working to elect Democrats in every part of the state and turn progressive ideas into state law. I am the candidate with the most experience in and around state government of any candidate in this race, including Tom Tiffany, and a track record of actually delivering progress for people. I'm a lawyer by training. I spent 4 years at the helm of NAREL Pro-Choice Wisconsin. I've served in both the Senate and the Assembly, and I have that deep budget experience on the Joint Finance Committee. And most importantly, I'm a mom and stepmom of 5. So I am deeply committed to a Wisconsin where we're going to raise wages, lower costs, especially on the big ticket items like housing and health care and child care. We're going to fully fund our public schools once and for all. And we're going to protect our freedoms from this dangerous authoritarian regime. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for our state. We need a candidate, a progressive who can win and one who can govern and deliver the progress that we all deserve. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Senator Royce. All right, so I've prepared questions. It's going to be rather random here, so they're going to hear about all kinds of topics, and then, like I said, we'll give them a chance to mention other topics that didn't come up in the questioning. Senator Royce mentioned school funding, and I've got that one right here at the top of my page, so let's just go right to it. The Department of Public Instruction recently released an estimate of the general school aid that each public school district will receive in the next fiscal year. With no increase in the state's general school aid appropriation in the last state budget, districts will continue to operate without additional state general aid in the next fiscal year. The general aid appropriation remains at $5.58 billion for the third consecutive year, leaving the state to redistribute the same level of funding throughout districts with districts through the equalization aid formula. And as you know, inflation hasn't been 0% for the past 3 years, has it? So 38% of districts, that's 160 districts, are going to receive more general aid than they did this past fiscal year, 38%. 9 districts will get no change. That means 60% of Wisconsin's school districts, 252 of them, are projected to receive less state aid than last year. 92 of those 252 districts are going to see a 15% decrease in state aid, the maximum allowable under law. The proper question to ask our candidates would be, what? But instead, we'll ask, how are you going to build a better mousetrap, working with the legislature, not just the magic wand. What are you going to work with the legislature to do once you see how it's composed? I'm just going to go down the line this way first. Joel Brennan, we'll start with you. Yeah, we know where this one's going. There we go.
Once bitten, twice shy when it comes to that stuff. Pat hit you with a lot of statistics. Let me hit you with one more. If we had just kept pace with inflation since 2008, there would be about $3,000 per kid being spent more on kids in Wisconsin. And so fundamentally, this is broken. We have a system now that pits property taxpayers against kids in Wisconsin schools. We celebrated, and this, the Northwoods was part of, what was great about Chris Taylor's win in the spring, where there were counties that hadn't gone for a progressive in a long time, on, but on that same day, on that election day, 60 school districts around the state of Wisconsin went to a referendum just to keep the lights on, not to build a new science classroom, not to build a new middle school, but just to keep the lights on. That's not good enough in Wisconsin, and that's the biggest condemnation that we can have about what's going on in state government and our commitment to kids in Wisconsin. So what would I do about it? That's the question. One, we have a 33-year-old school funding formula. It was put in place in 1993. It didn't work then. It doesn't work for kids. It doesn't work for parents. It doesn't work for teachers in 2026. So with a few more allies in the state legislature, as governor, what I would do is scrap that funding formula, go to what most other states have done, a formula that is kid-centric, that says every kid has value. You then add on top of that English language learners, special needs. You add on for urban and rural poverty. Like, that's the way you get to a point where you're no longer pitting kids and property taxpayers against each other. The state needs to reaffirm its 2/3 commitment to public schools in the state, and that would immediately bring down property taxes. But we are in a situation where, for a generation, we have pushed kids and property taxpayers against each other. What we've lost focus on is outcomes for kids, because we are not doing as well as we should in Wisconsin, but we won't until we make the fundamental changes in the school funding formula, and we decide that we're not going to tolerate the results that have become acceptable for too many people and too many places across the state.
Representative Hong, school funding, whatever the makeup of the legislature is, what are people going to see in you?
Public education is a cornerstone of democracy, and we cannot have a strong democracy unless we fund public education. I have served as the ranking Democrat and continue to serve as the ranking Democrat on the Committee on Education, and I've seen firsthand the Republicans' continuous attempt to move towards privatization and expand the voucher program. What we are fighting for is 90% special education reimbursement. That is critical so that our schools have flexible funding, that we increase wages for our educators and close that per pupil funding gap. And I agree with my friend here, Joel Brennan, that we need to build a new school funding formula that is actually equitable, closes the racial disparities, closes the opportunity gaps when it comes to our students of all different backgrounds. And right now, we already introduced a bill that I think Republicans will find quite attractive because it lowers property taxes by over 40% while taxing the ultra rich in two different tax brackets to make sure we have those funds to fund special education reimbursement. So we tax the rich, we fund our school, we have surplus funds right now that belong to the people of Wisconsin, that we must be courageous enough to use those funds for our kids so we have the shared future that our communities deserve, and that we ensure that we're able to keep democracy stronger, protecting us from the Trump regime, and making sure that our kids have what they deserve. This is a constitutional obligation. The state's being sued right now because we have abdicated our duty to fully fund our public schools with uniformity in funding and making sure that every child, no matter your zip code or ability, has the opportunity to thrive in a rightful, equitable, good public education in their community.
Senator Royce.
As governor, my number one budget goal is going to be to make Wisconsin the public education state again, as it was when I was a child. I'm a daughter of Taylor County, rural Wisconsin, north of Highway 29, and my parents moved here from other states because they knew that as a family of modest means, their kids would get a great public education. And then we later moved down to Madison, and we did. But I can see that what my kids are getting is not the same as what we got. Now, money is not the only thing our schools need to thrive and deliver the highest quality public education, but we cannot do it without money. We have had 8 Republican budgets in a row shortchanging our kids. Our property taxes are way too high, and it is inequitable. I have already begun the work with my Senate colleagues and stakeholders of how we can reform this funding formula to make it more equitable and to meet the needs of every single child, not based on arbitrary formulas that weren't even effective when they were put in place. But at the end of the day, we need more money in public education. We have got to actually invest state dollars to take the pressure off of property taxpayers and to make sure that our schools get what they need. I am proud to be the candidate that has been endorsed by WEAC, our state teachers union, because they trust me not just to have the right values as I have championed public education throughout my public life, but I actually have a plan to get it done regardless of who is in charge in the legislature, as I have been able to do throughout my career. One of the most important things that we can do for public education is to finally bring this voucher scheme to a responsible end. Now, there are Democrats in this race who are pro-voucher, and there are Democrats in this race, a few of us, who are anti-voucher, but I am the one that actually has a plan, a three-step plan for how we can finally end this voucher scheme, because I believe that public dollars are for public education, period.
Thank you, Senator Royce. All right, let's talk data centers for a sec. And you know, 2 years ago, I don't think many of us were talking about it at all. This topic has really taken off. In fact, it has got such a political half-life that I think it's actually starting to come around from its furthest point of ban all data centers now to people going, well, wait, these are probably going to get built anyway somewhere, so what's the best path forward? So that's my simple question to you. When it comes to data centers for Wisconsin, what is the best path forward? Representative Hong, we'll start with you.
Our public resources are not for sale, and Wisconsin will not be sold out to big tech and developers. I introduced legislation this year to put a moratorium on the construction of new hyperscale AI data centers, and I continue to be the only candidate who supports a moratorium on AI data centers. Now, this is critical because the state has incredibly loose regulations when it comes to holding polluters accountable, when it comes to ensuring that we have public resources and public natural resources that are actually protected with guardrails from the state. And we are seeing folks all across the state continue to battle rising utility bills that are 30-40% increase than what folks had been paying over the years. And that's only going to continue to go up because the energy demand of data center continues to jack up the prices of our utility costs. I've also introduced the bill, which is a 2% rate cap bill. So families who are energy burdened will pay no more than 2% of their annual income. That's divided by 12. This is partially because our state tax dollars have been hoarded by Republicans in the legislature and not distributed equitably to our towns, cities, and county governments. And I understand why data centers coming in and developers saying that it's going to increase and strengthen the local economy, but we cannot govern on promises. And we should absolutely make sure these not only these data centers pay their own way, but that they have to pay before they build, that this is a local decision and local control in the hands of the communities so that they have a say in whether or not these are going to be built. So the most responsible thing to do is to ensure that we have that moratorium so that we can put the regulations in place and make a decision that is for the people and that it's happening at the community level with transparency, no NDAs, and ensuring that we are actually protecting our natural waterways, our resources, and the future of our kids, as opposed to risking pollution and selling our state out to growing big tech and growing AI.
Right. Thank you, Representative Hong. Senator Royce, what is the best path forward for Wisconsin on data centers with you as governor?
The status quo is absolutely intolerable, where you have the richest, most powerful corporations in the history of the world running roughshod over our local communities. We need to put immediate, strong state standards in place in January to stop the development of data centers without regulation. And that bill has 49 co-sponsors in the legislature. Almost every single Democrat, including Fran and I, are on that strong regulation bill, and it can pass immediately in January. I have put forth the strongest plan for how we can immediately stop that, because the state standards is just the beginning. But what we can't do is chase the moratorium. The moratorium bill that Fran's talking about is only a pause until strong regulations are passed, but it has only 9 co-sponsors. And if we are chasing a moratorium that's not going to pass, we are allowing the status quo to continue. And that is not acceptable to me. So in addition to passing state standards, I will direct the DNR and the PSC and our other state agencies to immediately begin enforcing the strongest regulations against our existing data centers that are already under construction. I will also establish a state negotiating team of experts so that if a community wants to negotiate with a data center who is willing to meet those strong standards, they don't have to have their retired town board chair going up against some Facebook lawyer that makes $5,000 an hour. Most importantly, we need to end the subsidies for data centers that are going to cost us $2 billion. Instead, they need to be paying us. And that's why my plan will require an upfront payment of any data center on the order of hundreds of millions of dollars, and that money will be used to capitalize a public clean energy infrastructure bank that we can give 0% interest loans to community centers, to schools, to municipalities to make those clean energy upgrades. Because at the end of the day, we need cleaner energy, we need lower energy costs. And it's not enough to just focus on regulating the data centers. We also have to regulate big tech, and no legislator in this state has authored more legislation to bring big tech to heel, AI, social media, than I have.
Senator Royce, thank you. Secretary Brennan.
I'm going to start by evoking a company that maybe you haven't heard of in a while, and that's Foxconn. Because my job when I took over as Secretary of Administration was to work with Governor Evers to try to limit the damage that Foxconn was going to do in Wisconsin. So I've already done this. So like that I want you to have for context. I also want to make sure, Fran says she's the only one for a moratorium. I have also said that I would be for stopping the approval of new data centers, but I feel like we're playing a little game of name that tune. She said it would take a year. I think we could do it in 90 days because it's that important, and there is legislation that's ready to go. There are 4 things we need to do to provide certainty, because what happened when the state got into the data center game 2 years ago with tax incentives that were approved by the legislature and signed by the governor, they hung local units of government out to dry. They provided no guardrails. And so what needs to happen is, 1, we need to make sure that none of the great people who are sitting around here pay for the construction, the operation, the transmission, the ultimate retirement of data centers. Number 2, this is a place in the state where we absolutely have utter regard and respect and adoration for our environment. We need to make sure if data centers are being built that they are meeting all the environmental standards, that they are pushing us towards our renewable energy goals and requirements that we're going to have by 2050, that there are real teeth there. Number 3, if we're building data centers in Wisconsin, it has to be by Wisconsin union labor. And number 4, we need to make sure that if these are going to be approved, we're never going to be in a situation where there are these non-disclosure agreements where things come to you as a community member 98% baked and you have no say. This is not the Wisconsin that we live in. So we need to make sure that there is a vehicle for local government, there's a vehicle for local voices to be heard on this. There are going to be places where this doesn't happen. In DeForest, they didn't want it. In Caledonia, in Greenleaf, there are places that it does. But unless and until we have that guardrail and that bar set, we are only going to continue to have the uncertainty that has reigned and the anger that has caused around the state with everybody, including the people that are here.
All right, Joel, thank you very much. I would like to take a moment to say that for all of the candidates in the race, they have phenomenal websites. If you have not looked at them yet, this is great. It's good to hear directly from them, but we are so much more fortunate than it used to be. We were dependent on the local newspaper to put in what we used to call an idiot box. Here's the candidates, here's the issues, and in like 60 words. Here, thank God, there's a bottomless barrel of ink on the web. Read what they've got to say about it and their social media pages as well. It's also, given that it's 10 o'clock or 10:02, I was warned, I was advised at 10 o'clock, let people know that we still have the opportunity for you to get up. Don't worry, we're friends. It's the living room. You can get up, head to the back, and write a question on an index card. And in about 20 minutes, they're going to bring those cards up to me, and we'll start doing some audience questions. So at your leisure, go let us know what else you want to make sure we bring up. All right, let's turn to land conservation. When we talk about land conservation in Wisconsin, most folks understandably think of the Knowles-Nelson Stewardship Fund. But there's also, for example, been the years-long effort to protect the Pelican River Forest, not far from here. The effort to undermine that and the effort to undermine protection for Wisconsin land and water is being led by a right-wing anti-conservation group out of Texas called American Stewards of Liberty. They contributed to Donald Trump's Project 2025. They have cheered the mass firings that have impacted our forests and national parks, and their Wisconsin champion has been Tom Tiffany. If he wins, expect an effort to return federal funds and prevent the restart of Knowles-Nelson state funding. Now, to be fair, this is not just about overdevelopment of strip malls and strip mines and data centers, but frankly also protecting landowners, because not every solar and wind project developer has been on the up and up. So I'd like to hear from the candidates how you will work with the legislature to protect Wisconsin's natural resources from a variety of threats that are out there. Senator Royce, we'll begin with you.
I have stated that in my first week, there are 3 things I'm going to pass emergency funding for. One is childcare to prevent the closure of early childhood centers. The other is special education reimbursement so that schools get what they were promised by Republicans in the legislature. And the third is Knowles-Nelson. We have to get that program back online. And this is personal to me because my stepdad is a conservation attorney. His family hails from Ashland, and he helped to create and even name that program. More broadly, we need to restore environmental law and order in this state. And as an attorney, I want our DNR to be ruled by science and evidence. I want climate change to be real again. For too long, polluters have been writing their own permits and getting rubber stamps because the DNR has been defanged, defunded, and politicized. As governor, I do not want to decide how many deer should be hunted. I do not want to decide what the safe level of PFAS in water is. I want science in charge. But I will also restore the public intervener at the Department of Justice because our natural resources and our environment need all of the help that they can get. Toxic Tom Tiffany would be the worst governor we have ever had for natural resources. This is an existential threat. And I remember because I was in the legislature when he was first elected, and he went on a tear trying to repeal Wisconsin's Prove It First mining law. We stopped him the first time, but he went on and was successful. And I was the legislator that filed the open records request to get all of the dirty communications between him and the mining executives and lobbyists. I actually had to threaten to sue them to get those records. And the lawyer who helped me pro bono was Susan Crawford, our new Supreme Court Justice. So this has been an issue that I've been passionate about, and as governor, I am going to make sure that our natural resources are protected. Because even if you don't care about the future of the planet, and I do, our top 3 industries are manufacturing, agriculture, and tourism, and the number one thing we can do for quality of life is make sure that we are protecting our natural resources.
All right, thank you, Senator Royce. Secretary Brennan.
You know, I think we all have campaign experiences that will live with us forever. The last time that I was here, I got the chance to paddle down the Bois Brule River in Brule, the river of presidents. Calvin Coolidge was there more than 100 years ago. Like, this is who we are as Wisconsin. And if there's anything that gives you a sense of our mutual connection, it is experiences like that. But also, before I left Brule, you know what I did? I stopped at the DNR fish hatchery there, which is now closed. Last year, 372,000 brown trout went into Lake Michigan and Lake Superior from that. This year, it'll be 0. This is what's at stake for us. And so, yes, we need to make sure that we are doing things that reinvest in Knowles-Nelson. 90% of us live within a mile of a project that's been enhanced by Knowles-Nelson. 750,000 acres have been protected by that. It is the poster child for bipartisan ways that we can protect our environment and stop what people think is this false choice between we can have a good environment or we can have economic development. These are the types of things that we can do. But we also, and I agree with Kelda, there is when I was the Secretary of Administration, I was responsible for all the human resources across 35,000 people in state government. One of the places, probably the place that has been most decimated over the course of the last 15 years has been the Department of Natural Resources. It does not have the resources to do what it needs to do. We need to make sure that it does that. When it does, I'm going to take a page out of what Josh Shapiro has done in Pennsylvania. Josh, who's the governor. You know what he did? He set out and said, hey, if you're applying for a permit, if you want to get a license, we're going to put a time certain on it, and if you don't get it in that time certain, we'll give you your money back. And you know what? In Pennsylvania, they've given back almost no money. You know why? Because people in state government are proud of the work that they do, and they will step up to that challenge. But they can only do that if there are enough people to do that job. Like, that's the kind of stuff that we can do as state government. That's the Wisconsin that we can be if we have the chance and if we have the level of investment that's necessary in our state.
All right. Representative Hung.
Within the climate movement, we have two demographics and groups of communities that we must be listening to actively. And that's our young people who have the most at stake for their future, as well as our indigenous communities. You know, what I've seen over the last couple of years in the state legislature, but what we have seen throughout our history is the development that comes in and harms communities and deprives folks of clean air, clean water, and clean lands, that we have seen our young people have to bear the brunt of pollution in the air and continue to be, have that compromise their health. I think that beyond funding the Knowles-Nelson program via executive order and emergency funding, we must pass legislation that continues to fund it and expand it so that it's a predictable financing for that program that we know impacts every Wisconsinite across the state. I have heard from folks both today and in my time in coming up to Oneida and Vilas County about the concern with the growing developments around our lakes and our waterways. And that means that we need to give our local governments the opportunity and the actual ability with removing preemptions from the state, making sure that our local governments are actually funded through an equitable shared revenue formula so that local communities, via making sure that we've got the state standards needing, are able to pass the ordinance to protect themselves from growing development across the state. And then with the formation of a green bank to make sure that we are getting coal-powered plants offline and investing in renewable infrastructure so that more people have access to clean energy, and that we're ensuring that this is actually going to lower costs for working families as well, because it is cheaper to build clean renewable energy infrastructure than it is to continue to rely on dirty energy.
All right, Representative Hong, thank you very much. All right, let's try some individually tailored questions here. Joel Brennan, you did something unusual this week. You released a book of opposition research about yourself. Something, by the way, we've all had to do as candidates. You basically have to pay a private investigative firm to dig up dirt on you to see what's out there. What's the other side going to bring up? You did that, and you've put your book out there. Was that just in response to recent events in Maine, or did you have other reasons for bringing that up?
I appreciate you asking about that, Pat, because I think I may be the only candidate in this race, Democrat or Republican, and maybe the only candidate in America who's going to do that in this particular cycle. Was it about what happened in Maine? Was it about what happened with Graham Plattner? Yes. Is it because that's who we should be as Americans and that's who we should be as candidates, and that transparency should be a hallmark of what we do as campaigns, and it should be a hallmark of who we are as governors? Yes, absolutely. It's 99 pages. It's not going to be a page turner like a Stephen King novel, I can assure you that right now, but it is an accurate reflection. All of us, if any of us up here says we haven't done this, either we're naive or we're not telling you the truth, because we all need to spend money to have somebody go out there and tell you this is what's out there about you in the public domain. And if you are the candidate that runs in the general election, these are the things that they're going to talk to you about. Hey, I was almost evicted 25 years ago because I stopped paying rent because I lived in a substandard place. Makes me like a lot of people in Wisconsin. What I didn't know is that I had rights as a tenant and I could have done some other stuff. Now I know those things. But you know what? It's worse now after Robin Voss's reign of terror than it was 25 years ago. Those are things we ought to fix. And so, if you have me in a general election, we won't be defending statements I made about defunding the police, because I've never said it. Like, those are things you should know. I won't be able to say, or I won't be in a position where, yeah, I took some corporate PAC money, but now I'm against it. That's not stuff you're going to have from me. You will have a chance, and I welcome you to go and take a look at this 99 pages. If you're having trouble falling asleep one night, maybe you want to do it, but it is a reflection of who I am.
I'm going to hijack your last 30 to simply ask this. 99 pages, a lot of stuff. Was there anything not in there that you'd like to get off your chest right now?
I think they did a pretty good job of me.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Thank you.
But like again, to finish, again, it's not about the candidates that are up here. It's about the stakes that we have and what do we want to get done in the next 4 years and what the damage is that we have to undo over the last 15 years. We shouldn't be in a position where there's October surprises. We shouldn't be in a position where it's a drip, drip, drip of what's going on and what people are feeding to the media. We should be transparent about what's out there. You get that from me, and that's what you get from me as governor.
All right. Representative Hong, similar question just in terms of the things that we learn about our candidates' pasts and the things that you want to tell people about yourself, because everybody else gets to label you. Maybe you want to talk about some of those labels and stories.
The people of Wisconsin are focused, as they should be, and care about the solutions in what government is going to do for them as working class people to make their lives easier and ensure they have what they need to live a life of dignity. We have seen many different oppo come out about me and our campaign. You know, we have been leading in the polls and have received great support and have grown our momentum since we launched our campaign back in September of 2025. And I think the response may be coming from other candidates who may feel somewhat threatened or concerned. And we are proud to be the campaign that has always remained positive, to stay hyper-focused on the issues. And I am someone that even before I announced my candidacy, that is willing to invest and know that being a public servant is what I aim to be, even more than a politician. I have been holding myself accountable, been transparent, and apologized for things that I may have said in the past. And yes, it came out that I had credit card debt, and it was an honest financial mistake in which my business, a restaurant that I had for over 7 years, during COVID, I wanted to make sure that our employees were paid, that our bills to our local vendors were paid, and took on that debt myself. Yes, I have tweeted about public safety and police, but I am not going to defund police. And if anyone has been defunding law enforcement, it has been Robin Vos, who has been robbing local government of their equitable funding, which has, you know, it's at the local level where law enforcement is funded. And I take public safety deeply, deeply seriously. And if we are not tough on causes, we cannot be tough on crime. Everyone has a right to feel safe. If anyone has a question about things that they may have heard about me, labels that folks are putting on me, I am more than happy to have a conversation with you. And what I say to you, I am sure I know that I would say to the general public.
Senator, let me thank you, Representative Hong, by the way, for that. Senator, we'll tailor it slightly to you simply because you have a long, and you would say, proud history with NARAL and working for reproductive rights for women. Wisconsin's a purple state, and so I want to know, along with what I know you've said 1,000 times since the Dobbs decision about women's reproductive health rights. However, especially if one or both houses of the legislature is in, Republican hands, where are you going to find common ground on things that deal with reproductive health rights, women's rights? Because, if you win, you right away get the, you get that tag as being a single issue abortion voter from some circles. How do you address that?
Well, that would be a huge mistake if Tom Tiffany tried to do that, because this is a man who voted for a national abortion ban, and abortion is a winning issue in Wisconsin, especially post-Dobbs. No candidate has done more to defend our reproductive freedom than I have. And it's not just abortion, it's making sure that our young people are getting medically accurate information. It is access to birth control and prenatal care and postnatal care. It is addressing the infant mortality and maternal mortality crisis and guaranteeing IVF for folks who need fertility support. That's the work that I've been engaged in. Now, I will say, over 20 years ago, I helped to pass the first reproductive rights proactive bill in the state for 30 years through an anti-choice Republican-controlled assembly. I think there is an opportunity for common ground on these issues, but it will not come at the expense of women's lives and autonomy, not ever. And that's a principle that we should be proud of and always defend. I'm an open book. I have been in public life for 25 years, and I married into a big Catholic family. My husband, he's kind of the apostate. He's the black sheep of the family. And when he met me, he said he went 20 pages deep into Google, because if you go Google Kelda Madison, you find a lot of pages. And this was, 20 years ago, 19 years ago when we met. He was looking for something inflammatory, something that he could be like, ugh, my mom won't like seeing that. He couldn't find a thing. I know exactly what Tom Tiffany is going to say about me. He's going to say I'm a tax and spend liberal. I'm a Madison liberal, which is not true. I am a Medford liberal. And we can all correct him on that. I'm a daughter of the 7th Congressional. And he's going to say that I'm soft on crime because I don't believe that mass incarceration is making us more safe. I believe we need to be serious on public safety. But this is a really important question to ask. We need to be vetting our candidates because in Wisconsin, we can lose winnable elections. We cannot take our eyes off the ball. We need a candidate who can not only defend herself and knows exactly what Tiffany is going to say, but will aggressively prosecute the case against him and put him on the defensive because he is the one who is out of touch with Wisconsin values.
All right, Senator Royce, thank you. Now, because I shifted gears midstream here, our timekeepers are going to give a minute for both Representative Hong and Secretary Brennan on the topic of women's reproductive health rights, since we kind of went specific in that area. Fran, why don't we start with you, a minute on reproductive health rights and what people can expect from you as the candidate, and including common ground with Republicans in the legislature where possible.
I think it's important to assess what today's Republican Party is and the differences between maybe Republican parties from decades past. And they are extremist. But I have been building relationships with Republicans over my time in the state legislature, believe it or not. One that is, some people who say a lot of different things about me being extreme. What I know is the political capital needed to navigate the legislature and get things done is in building relationships. And I have done that with folks across the aisle within my party and the Democratic Socialist Caucus as well. Abortion is a human right, and the rest of us will not be able to exercise our freedoms unless we are investing in ensuring that everyone has reproductive freedom. And that comes with investing in public health and ensuring that the clinics that are providing this and the clinics that are providing some of the most essential health care for women across the state, that they are kept safe, that they are not demonized, and that they are adequately funded by the state.
Okay, Secretary Brennan.
Wisconsin has 72 counties. In 26 of them, at any given time, you may find that there is not a practicing OBGYN. And that is worse than it was a few years ago before the Dobbs decision. This is what we're doing when it comes to women's reproductive health and just basic women's health in Wisconsin. If you're going to a prenatal visit to deliver a baby for your well baby care, you could be going 2 or 3 hours. I have a sister who's an obstetrician in Northern Illinois who's delivered 12,000 babies in her time. You'll have to excuse the fact that some of them are Bear and Cub fans, but beyond that, give her credit and understand that she is somebody who's committed her life to this. And in Wisconsin, we have pushed people out of the state who deliver women's health care. We have curbed these services. This is something we need to be working on. Can I work with Republicans on it? Sure. The reasonable ones, if we can find them. But this is why we need to have a Democratic majority in the legislature. We need to undo the 1849 law. We need to make sure that there are all of the things that have been stepped up, all the things that have been put in place against women's health, against my 20-year-old daughter's ability to determine her own future with her own body. We need to make sure that that is something that we take very seriously and we work on in the next administration.
Joel, thank you very much. All right. We've got a lot of great questions from the audience. I do not know why I'm here. Y'all should just take turns coming up here. Let's go with, let's see, we went that way. Okay, Joel, we're going to start with Fran this time. What is your position on controlling wake boats? The last legislative session provided no meaningful protections and left it to towns. What is your view?
While I am a firm supporter of local control and ensuring our local governments have the funding that they need, I think it's important, just like when it comes to data centers, that the state is providing the regulations and the preemptions and the guardrails to make sure that those in the communities that are making these local decisions are still able to protect themselves from larger entities that may be coming in with a larger voice. And so my position is in that the state provide the guardrails needed to ensure that our local governments and our local communities are able to actually make these decisions with protections in place for natural resources, for the erosion that could be causing, and that there are other opportunities for local economies to be able to make sure that their tourism dollars are in place without compromising our natural resources. And so having the state preemptions and statutes that communities are asking for to be able to make these decisions at the local level is imperative.
All right, Senator Royce.
This is yet another area where the science should persuade us that wakeboating is incompatible with shallow water and with a lot of different ecologies that we might have throughout Wisconsin. We absolutely do need strong state standards that make sure that if it's shallower than 20 feet, you don't get to use wakeboats. We have to protect ourselves against invasives and make sure that those ballasts get cleaned out. But we also do need to retain local control so that local communities can make decisions that are right for their waterways. Listen, water is different in all seasons. It's different if there's flooding. Local communities need to be able to say, given the sensitivity of the habitat that we're trying to rebuild here, we can't have wakeboating within 1,000 feet. Or, you know, if it's a high water flooding area, maybe this season or for these couple of weeks, we can't do it. You have to allow that flexibility while making sure that the state is setting a minimum standard of protection for all waterways. There are going to be plenty of lakes where people can recreate in the ways that they want to, including wakeboating. But it's our job to protect the water of the state that is held in trust for all of us, the public, to use.
All right, Secretary Brennan.
You know, you will hear all of us talk about local control, and there are only hundreds of issues over the last 15 years where control at the local level and state preemption has wrested away any ability for local control. So yes, this is an aquatic invasive species issue. This is an erosion issue. This is around the health of our lakes. And one, I want to give credit. Someone walked up to me and talked to me about this as I came in today. You are a well-organized group of allies in this issue, and with the margins we're going to have in the legislature, I think there is room for us to make some good movement on this. Yes, there should be state regulations around, you know, for the larger lakes, 250 or 500 feet to make sure that you're doing that. We should make sure that there are abilities for local communities, like has been done here, for them to do more, to go beyond what the state has, and to ensure that there is that level of flexibility. But ultimately, this is around how government should work. The state should set out what the priorities are on the larger scale, and then there is expertise. There are people at the local level who can go beyond or who use that local knowledge to make sure that you are doing right by your communities here, because there is nothing more important to these communities up here than the health of our lakes.
All right. Let's see. Let's start with Senator Royce next time. This was an audience question about, you know, mass incarceration and rehabilitation. From my own notes, candidate Tony Evers said in 2018 that reducing Wisconsin's prison population by 50% was a goal worth accomplishing. But that figure is the same today as it was 8 years ago. Now, Evers, of course, had a hostile legislature, and you all might not, but at a time when Democrats are being accused of coddling criminals, more so now that the governor is restarting the commutation process, what are you going to say to undecided voters who've heard Tom Tiffany and others say that some or all of you want to get rid of prisons entirely? What is it that you want to do when it comes to public safety, especially starting with our prison system? Senator Royce.
We cannot get rid of prisons because Donald Trump and his criminal ICE agents do need to be held accountable for their crimes. I'm a lawyer by training, so I believe in the rule of law, and I'm a mom, and I will never do something that puts my kids or your kids in jeopardy, ever. Tom Tiffany can stuff it if that's the argument that he wants to make. I am actually serious about public safety because I believe that is a fundamental human right. I am also a deep believer in criminal justice reform. I know that incarcerating 3 times as many people as Minnesota is not making us any safer, and we are not 3 times worse than Minnesotans. And we can blame the Republican legislature all we want, but the truth is the governor has a lot of power to help divert people who don't belong in prison on the front end by doing things like legalizing cannabis and using more treatment and alternatives, to help rehabilitate people while they're in prison and make sure that they're literate and getting job skills, and to help with that reentry process. I've got detailed plans for how to do this. You put 1 quarter in the machine, I could talk about this for hours as a former Innocence Project alum.
Senator or Secretary Brennan.
Just give me an out.
I think we could all spend more time on this. And I just want to, as Secretary of Administration, when I came to state government, there are 35,000 people in state government. I think by a show of hands, you know what is the top one? Corrections. You know, more than a third or almost a third of the people in state government work for the Department of Corrections. In Minnesota, they spend about $200 per capita on people in their incarceration. We spend $100 more. Think of what $600 million could do to everything at the front end of that pipeline, to diversion, to trying to do things in early childhood education, to stopping the education to prison pipeline that happens so much in Wisconsin. Those are the things we can do. And you know what? It has happened in other states, in Texas, in South Carolina. They have done all kinds of things in red states because they know that this is something that stifles economic development. It stops future growth in these states, and that's something we should be doing in Wisconsin. So all of us, I think, are passionate about the fact that we can reduce that prison population. We can make sure that we are not sending people back to prison for crimeless revocation, things that other states in the Midwest are ahead of us on that we are in Wisconsin. Those are things that we can do immediately when I get elected governor.
All right, and Representative Hung.
I was asked not too long ago what one of the biggest issues are when it comes to carceral reform. And I've been thinking about how this is deeply a societal, cultural perception issue where we are dehumanizing people who are incarcerated and preventing them from living a life of dignity. You know, when folks say that what I want most when I'm in, and this is coming from an incarcerated person, is to be able to see sunlight. We must end solitary confinement. We must make sure that no youth is tried as an adult, that we are ending juvenile license sentencing, that we're ensuring that all of our workers in our prison and our carceral system are paid but also kept safe, and that, you know, we are investing actually in making sure that, you know, the closing the prisons that we need to, but also making sure that the prisons that are currently in existence have the maintenance changes that they need, that we're investing in those. And these are things that we can do immediately while also simultaneously making sure that federal agents that are enforcing fascism are held accountable and prosecuted, and that we're funding local governments so that they are able to invest in the public safety needs that they have in their individual communities.
All right, Representative Hong, thank you. I've got a couple of political or process questions, election reform questions, and I'm going to ask it both parts here and have you address them both. Secretary Brennan, we'll start with you. 2 questions. One, would you support moving Wisconsin's primary, which is one of the later dates in August, would you support moving it to an earlier month? And would you support ranked choice voting in cases where there are 3 or more candidates on the ballot?
Yes and yes. I think that the primary process is a challenge for us, but I want to remind people what happened in 2018. One of us was a candidate in that race. Tony Evers was in a primary that was more crowded than the one we have now. Tony Evers was running against a sitting incumbent, and he came out of that primary with wind at his back and was able to defeat Scott Walker. And so people who are concerned about, you know, the lateness of our primary, there will be resources, there will be momentum behind us, and Tom Tiffany is going to have to stand in defense of who he has been as an acolyte and 100% supporter of Donald Trump. So make no mistake, we will have momentum coming out of this. But yes, on the other part of the question related to ranked choice voting, anything that disrupts the status quo that we have in elections is something we should do. We should make sure in Wisconsin that we are creating nonpartisan ways that we do redistricting for the next generation, so that we're not in a position where the people in office choose who they want to represent them instead of the opposite. We should be able to do those things in Wisconsin. We should be reform-minded. We have been leaders in this, and we should get back to leading on these issues.
All right. Representative Hahn.
Yes and yes. There is already legislation that I have supported that would ensure that we can include ranked choice voting in our election system, that we need permanent fair maps where the voters are choosing their politicians and not the other way around. We have fair maps right now, but an independent redistricting commission is paramount in order for us to continue to have fair, secure, safe elections, which we have now. But administering these elections that are on the backs of our clerks and so many of our poll workers, we have to invest in those systems as well. I was in Hayward, Wisconsin, talking to a gentleman with a red Trump hat who agreed with me that we are not funding our elections adequately, that folks up there have to vote in a one-room schoolhouse, and that there aren't enough resources to make sure that people are getting access to the ballot box. Automatic voter registration, ensuring that there are no federal agents within 250 feet of our voting booths, and that those who try to interfere in our elections are held accountable and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
All right. Senator Rice.
Yes and yes. But if we're going to move the election, the primary election forward, we have got to have public financing of campaigns, because right now we have the best democracy money can buy, and that's not a great democracy. And if we don't want elections to be wealth elections, then you have to give candidates, especially first-time or young candidates, those that don't have connections to money, the time to raise money. You need both. And we absolutely do need ranked choice voting or instant runoff or fusion voting, ways for people to express their preferences so they don't feel like they have to vote for the lesser of two evils or throw away their vote. But the most important thing that we can do to engage people civically, besides expanding the right to vote and protecting our elections and more early and mail-in voting, is we have to deliver for them when we have power. The number one reason why people do not vote and engage in politics is because they feel like it doesn't matter. And so we need a Democratic governor who will use power fearlessly to make our lives better and show people that it matters when we vote.
All right. Thank you, Senator Royce. I'm going to editorialize for a minute. If you're on the fence at all about ranked choice voting, just Google up ranked choice voting, Alaska, Sarah Palin, and you'll see why she's not a member of Congress right now. Pause for applause. Okay, next. Now we've done all the fight. We're going to fight. We're going to be different. We're going to push harder than Democrats ever did before. And yet, let's not pretend that if you win, that Republicans are going to suddenly throw rose petals as you walk to the rostrum to deliver your budget address. I mean, even with the fact that Robin Vos and Devin LeMahieu and several other hardline Republicans will be gone. Pause for applause. Okay, let's say you're elected governor, but the Democratic Party controls neither the Assembly nor the Senate, because it's from now to Election Day, anything could happen. A Democrat could win the governor's seat, but enough legislative races could go sideways. So you've got a Republican legislature. And I've been asked from the audience question, how will you build relationships with Republicans to best represent all Wisconsinites? Another person put it, what are the important goals you believe you can realistically accomplish in your first 2 years? Another, do you have a bipartisan record of some sort to demonstrate how you can be collaborative when it's required? This is a tough line. You want to fight, but you also have a legislature to work with. I think, Representative Hong, I think we're starting with you.
We have over 6,000 people who have signed up to volunteer for our campaign, and they have already knocked tens of thousands of doors talking about the importance of the trifecta. So right now, we are working to make sure that we have a Democratic trifecta. But should it be a split government, I am unafraid to wield the power of the executive office to the fullest extent to make sure that maybe if we have to declare a state of emergency, to be able to allocate resources to our communities, that we are doing that, to use executive order to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make lives easier and better for people across Wisconsin. I have not only passed bipartisan legislation, but I have done it on an issue that involves race to ensure that our kids across the state in our K-12 public schools are learning about Asian American history. That was Republican bipartisan legislation that I worked with communities all across the state to pass. And I've been building relationships with Republicans, many that will be returning to the legislature because they are in these red districts, but even the ones that are not. We have bipartisan support and bipartisan opposition on issues around fair taxation and taxing the ultra-rich, on moratorium regulation or moratorium on data centers. But the first thing and the only thing that I want to make sure we get done in 2 years is funding our public schools and passing my Healthy School Meals for All legislation to ensure that no kid is hungry in school, that they have a free breakfast and lunch that is healthy and nutritious, because hungry kids can't learn.
All right, Senator Royce.
Thank you. For more than 20 years, I have been able to get bipartisan legislation on progressive issues like reproductive rights, criminal justice reform, expanding access to health care passed in the toughest legislative environments, including gerrymandered Republican legislatures, split legislatures, and that bright shining moment when we had a very narrow Democratic majority, and that was actually hard too. That might have been the hardest. Of all the good candidates running in the stage, I am the only one that has that track record. I give credit to Fran. She did pass one bill in 3 terms in the Assembly, but none of the other candidates running have passed even one bill in the legislature. I'm also proud to have really broad coalition of support that we're going to need to beat Tom Tiffany. I have former Republican county party chairs. I have former Republican legislators and legislative staffers supporting my race. And I also have people on the far left, including Greens and socialists and libertarians and everybody in between. If we think we're going to beat Tiffany with a mealy-mouthed moderate who's going to alienate the young people that already feel disaffected, we're not. If you think we're going to be able to beat Tiffany with a candidate who cannot relate to most Wisconsinites because they're too extreme, we're not. We need somebody who can bring everyone together, and I have demonstrated the ability to do that again and again.
All right, Secretary Brennan.
So part of my job when I was Secretary of Administration was during COVID, and we had billions of dollars of federal relief money that needed to go out to Wisconsinites or people who were going to, either struggle very much or die. And a lot of what I did was spend my time talking to local elected officials around the state about what was going on. You know what I never asked them? Are you a conservative or are you a progressive? I asked, what's going on the ground and how do we help? I think that's what we need more of in government. We sure as hell need to do it during times of crisis, but at least in normal times, or at least what passed for normal times, the times we live in now, we need a little more of that now. If this is about grievance, if this is about vengeance, you can vote for somebody else, because this is not the time that we live in. It's not the time for us to be the other side of the coin to Donald Trump, where we're just going to be about how do we win and how do we rub people's noses in it. There are really important problems we need to solve around public education, around housing, around economic development, around health care in the state of Wisconsin, and we're not going to do it if our job is just going to be about getting even. I have worked in my life in the nonprofit sector, in government, in that middle space, and none of us on this stage can tell you that we have worked in that in the last 15 years, because it hasn't existed in Wisconsin. That's who I have been throughout the course of my career. That's a little bit of what we need in a governor. That's what we need as a state moving forward.
All right, thank you, Secretary Brennan. All right, one more, and then we're going to wrap things up with each candidate being asked to bring up an issue that we haven't brought up yet, and I want to make sure it's not health care, so I'm going to throw this in for the last one. Candidates, I come to you as a battle-scarred veteran of the lost battle for healthy Wisconsin. We lost that battle back in 2007, but we won the war in 2010 because that continued momentum for health care reform led us to the Affordable Care Act at the federal level. Some would take that to mean that progress on healthcare security should only be done in Congress and at the federal level. I am betting that you disagree. So when you run for re-election in 2030, what action will you point to and say you led the way for Wisconsinites to be better covered against illness and injury? Senator Royce, we'll start with you.
I'm going to open up the state health insurance plan, the very same coverage that Fran and I get, to let anybody buy in. This is more than a public option because employers will also be eligible. Think about the economic opportunity that we can unleash when we decouple health insurance and high-quality health care from your job. This will help save money and help small businesses and big businesses and school districts. And it takes what's working and expands it to everybody. It's also Trump-proof, unlike Medicaid expansion, which is now functionally off the table, unfortunately for our state, because of what Donald Trump and Tom Tiffany did in that last federal budget. Now listen, I am a healthcare for all person. I was on that Healthy Wisconsin train. We should have single payer, but I'm not running for Congress. So how do we get closer, quicker to universal health coverage and keep our rural hospitals and clinics open and address this looming crisis of 270,000 people being thrown off their care thanks to Tom Tiffany? It is this: opening up the state health care plan. You can read all of my detailed health care plans on my website. I am the candidate that actually has a workable solution for this.
All right, thank you, Senator Royce. Secretary Brennan.
You know, Kelda and I agree that that using the state health insurance plan as the thing to build towards a public option is the way we should start. Like, we should be able to measure how we're doing that. We need to take stock of where things are come next spring, because most of the harm that's happening at the federal level, this is how cynical they are. Most of the harm happens after the midterm elections. This is what we're dealing with. And so we are not going to have a partner at the federal level. So what are the things we should do? We should make sure we're trying to get health care for everybody, but we should start by covering kids. I have laid out plans to cover every kid up to 300% of the federal poverty level. That's something that's a Wisconsin value that we should be able to do. I talked to the group down here about, there's a pharmacy that closed that had an operation in Eagle River and in Land O'Lakes, and they didn't close because they couldn't get enough prescriptions. They closed because pharmacy benefit managers were costing them every time that they filled a prescription. This is a pharmacy that's been in business for nearly 100 years, a family that's been operating it for 40. It's gone now in this community, in this county. Like, this is what we are doing in Wisconsin. And so we need to make sure that we are doing those things. There are things that we can do. We can cap the cost of some prescription drugs in Wisconsin. That won't happen at the federal level, but we can do that here. But we need to plant a flag and say, in Wisconsin, we are going to be leaders, even if the federal government for the next 30 months is not going to be our partner.
All right, and Representative Hong.
We cannot permanently and sustainably lower healthcare costs unless we are attacking healthcare prices. When we put actual taxes on some of these large mega corporate hospitals, we will be able to use those funds to be able to invest in a rural healthcare initiative. We need to make sure that our Attorney General office is funded so that he can enact the anti-monopoly laws that are in statute to make sure that we are taking on hospitals that are trying to consolidate and make it so that they are compromising our the quality of care for folks across the state. We cannot afford to not expand Medicaid. We must invest in a public option and make it so that our current programs that are in Medicaid and our Badger Care systems right now are able to serve communities all across the state. We have to lower healthcare prices and make sure we're holding hospitals accountable for jacking up prices for different procedures. We need to make sure that we are taking on claim denials for insurance companies and actually do the responsible thing in making sure that we are exploring every single option within this first 2 years in being able to invest in fair, cheaper healthcare for all, guaranteeing that we are actually giving affordable healthcare for folks just by opening the state system is not guaranteed.
All right, Representative Hong, thank you. All right. I'm going to give our candidates a little extra time here just to clear their heads, because I did ask them to wrap things up with an issue that we didn't hit on. I'm looking back through my notes. I didn't get to affordable housing or mass transit or rural transit or rural food supply and all kinds of other things. So as you give your final remarks and thanks and plugs and everything, think about an issue that we didn't bring up. While you think about that, it seems a good time to give the closing credits now. Anybody in the Oneida or Vilas County Dems who helped in any way with planning this little shindig, raise your hand right now. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Thank you. These are not easy. These are not fun getting there. Then you get to this point, and it's actually quite fun. And thanks to every one of you for coming in on a Saturday morning. Although it's better than later when it's going to be 90 degrees out here. I'm glad they're going up to a place where it's cooler by the lake, in Ashland for a thing later on. But it means a lot that you are here. This is a big, important primary with a lot of good candidates. And you, by coming here, you've already told me that you are essentially, it's a weird touchy-feely term, but I'm going to use it anyway. You're like thought leaders. People are going to come to you and go, I don't know, who do you, and you're going to say, I went to this thing in Lake Tomahawk and here's what I think. Don't wait to be asked. You like somebody? Start spreading the word. If you like 2 people, spread it. If you got 3, go online and do some homework. You got to narrow this down. Time's wasting, okay? I hope I've given you all enough time to think. I'll go right down the line this time. Secretary Joel Brennan, something we didn't touch on, and then any other closing remarks. We're going to do 2 minutes for this because I'm asking them to put some extra stuff in. Take it away.
Okay. One, Pat called you thought leaders. I call you patriots. It's the week of July 4th. Thank you for your level of engagement. You honor us by having this group of people and this level of engagement. So I truly want to express my appreciation for everybody coming out here. Well, an issue, kind of the building blocks of where we want to be are around healthcare, education, and housing. We didn't talk a lot about housing here. When I was 20 years old in 1990, I'm waiting so you can do the math to figure out how old I am today. But when I was 20 years old, same age as my daughter is right now, the average age for a first-time home buyer in Wisconsin and nationally was 28 years old. 6 years ago in 2020, it was 33. Last year, it was 40. We are taking a generation and telling them that this idea of home ownership, of equity, of building wealth, of intergenerational wealth, this is not for you. This is not something you can accomplish. Think of what that means for employers. Think of what it means for our public school system, for the fabric of society and those who are invested in our communities. Like, this is the Wisconsin that we live in right now, and that's not good enough for us. And so we have also fallen behind our neighbors in the Midwest on that. They have been more aggressive about building new homes for people and allowing and affording opportunities for people to get into those homes. So if I get elected governor, we're going to plant a flag and say we're going to build 100,000 new entry-level homes over the next 4 years. That's twice the pace that Wisconsin has been on in the last 4 years. It's going to take partnership between the state and the local level, but we're Wisconsin. We still do things. We build things. This is the kind of stuff that we should be able to get done. The other thing we're going to do is create a 3% mortgage for first-time home buyers, if you qualify, but also for baby boomers. There are places around the state, in the city of Eau Claire, 25% of the homeowners live by themselves. There are baby boomers who are sitting on 3- and 4-bedroom homes. We need to do things that are going to loosen up that marketplace. There are complex problems that we have. If we have solutions that can provide solutions to a couple of different problems at the same time, we better do that. Speaking of solutions, in my last moments, I just want to tell you the distinction that I make amongst the other great candidates is that for the last 20 years, I have had nothing but executive experience, including in the top appointed position in the governor's cabinet, creating solutions, solving problems. I think that's what Wisconsin needs more than anything right now. I'm ready to do that on day one. I appreciate everybody coming out here, the reception that I have gotten on every trip that I have made to the Northwoods. Thanks very much, everybody, for being here today.
Thank you. Representative Francesca Hong.
On housing, it's imperative that we remove the state exemptions that make it harder to build more affordable housing, that makes it less affordable to continue to build. We're seeing private equity and large developers coming into communities and jacking up prices for so many folks, where it's getting harder and harder for workers to be able to live in the community that they work in. So taking on private equity and that we're putting in a higher tax rate for those who are purchasing their second or third home, and making sure that local governments are able to take on Airbnb and put in the ordinances to make sure that the people who are in their community are actually living in their their community. When it comes to agriculture and our roads, we must fully fund DACAP and make sure that we're taking bids from construction companies that are going to be using union jobs and ensure that they're using the types of materials that are long lasting so that we can invest in rural roads both at the county and local level by having increased shared revenue and at the state. I think that free childcare, making sure that there's paid leave for all, taking on the utility companies and lowering utility costs, and making sure that our students, our young people, have a shared future that they believe in. Right now, we are the campaign that has engaged the most Gen Z and fellow elder millennials like myself. And the reason that this is so critical is for us to maintain and sustain democratic power across the state. Because if we don't have young people learning from folks who have been in this work in strengthening democracy and knocking doors and making sure that we're fighting for flipping assembly and Senate seats from red to blue, we're not going to be able to keep that power and continue to grow it. And when we have a bold agenda where working class people see themselves in because they see a working class person that's not only fighting for them right now, but fighting alongside them, we are not going to be able to retain and make sure that these communities continue to vote blue. I am the candidate right now that meets the moment and ensures that we are building this Big Ten coalition that we need as Democrats to continue to build power and retain power so that we have a government that's actually a force of good. And we don't have a politician, but we have an actual public servant leading the way.
All right. Thank you, Representative Hung. All right. An issue we haven't touched on and closing remarks. Senator Royce, take us home.
Affordability. Affordability is the number one issue that is on the top of minds of Wisconsinites, no matter how they vote. And it's not just high prices. It is also a function of the fact that our wages have not kept up with inflation for decades. We are taking home a smaller share of the pie than we ever have in American society, those of us who work. And those at the very top have never taken home a greater share, including in the Gilded Age. That's why I am proud to be the lead author of the living wage bill that will bring the minimum wage up to $15 an hour with a path to $20 an hour. And we're going to restore collective bargaining rights for public and private sector workers, because that's how you build a middle class. Now, I also have detailed plans for how we're going to lower the cost of things like utilities, prescription drugs, healthcare, and housing. Joel actually mentioned some of them. But I want to talk about childcare, because I'm also one of the few legislators in the state and the only candidate for governor that actually has a kid in childcare. And we sent 2 kids to the University of Minnesota. We had a freshman and a sophomore one year, and we paid more for our baby in childcare. This is a crisis, and especially for rural communities. It is driving workforce shortages, and it is driving young people out of the state and making people not have kids. This is a huge tragedy, and we need public investment in early childhood. I have a plan to make universal, affordable early childhood education available to every Wisconsinite. That's my goal, to make Wisconsin a place where every single young person wants to build their life. It's also the work that I have been engaged in for 25 years. I've never sat out an election cycle, probably like a lot of you. I've been out there knocking on doors. Now, even though I've spent the majority of my career as an executive in the private and nonprofit sectors, I also have the most experience in state government of any candidate running. Most of my friends running for governor are relatively new to politics within the last couple of years. This is a moment for our most experienced progressive fighter who can actually win and govern the state. I ask for your vote on August 11th, and please join me and Kay Hoff if you have other questions in one of the rooms down the hall. We'll be there doing a little meet and greet. Thank you.
Senator Royce, thank you very much. I will direct you one more time to some of the signs that advertise local businesses in the area. Please patronize them. We love having you up here. It's tough to leave. Not that Chippewa Falls is a bad place, don't get me wrong, but it's so gorgeous up here, and you've been so wonderful with your hospitality and with your time today, and with all of the respect that you've shown our candidates. So again, thank you for your time. I'm Pat Kreitlow from UpNorthNews. Did I forget anything?
Yes, you did.
Oh.
You can't come to Oneida County without becoming a hodag.
Oh, of course. What do you got?
And, of course, when you come, you have to honor our people in Vilas County because they made sure. There you are.
It is. That is such a reasonable likeness. I mean, I did not pose for this. I promise you. Thank you.
And from Vilas County,
Okay.
they came from Eagle River Roasters to make sure you had good coffee in that cup.
Oh, thank you so much. Wow. See how running for office is cool. It is. But when you're not running and you can get gifts, how cool is it? Pretty damn cool. You guys are great. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you for being here today. And if you want to learn more, go over by the candidates' tables, get some literature, give them some of your time, quick conversation. Be respectful that they have to get on the road at some point here as well. Have a great day.